have the endorsement of one Republican senator, and you work with these people.
Senator Cruz.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
And Donald, if you want to be liked in Washington, that's not a good attribute for a president.
Donald Trump dishing it out and his opponents giving it right back. In the most contentious Republican debate of the campaign so far, the heat was on tonight in Houston as the 5 Republican presidential candidates engaged in a fiery, nonstop debate for 2 hours.
And this was the last debate before the Super Tuesday round of primaries, and the target all night long was Donald Trump. KCAL9 political reporter Dave Bryan is here with all the highlights. Dave?
Lena, Jeff, this was the most serious test Donald Trump has faced in any of the long series of Republican debates. And leading the attack this time was Senator Marco Rubio, whose aggressive questions and charges set the tone for the night. Less than 6 minutes after the first question was asked, the most important debate in the 2016 Republican presidential campaign exploded into vitriol when Senator Marco Rubio accused frontrunner Donald Trump of having hired illegal immigrants to work on one of his projects and then lost a lawsuit to the tune of $1 million as a result.
You acknowledge that, for example, you're the only person on the stage that's ever been fined for hiring people to work on your projects illegally. You hired some workers from Poland.
I'm the only one on the stage that's hired people. You haven't hired anybody.
Well, in fact, some of the people
and by the way,
well, but hold on.
I've hired tens of thousands of people over my job. You've hired
1,000 people
You've
from
had
another
nothing
company,
but problems
from another
with your
country.
credit cards, etc.
He hired workers from Poland, and he had to pay $1 million or so in a judgment.
That's wrong.
That's a fact.
Totally wrong.
Senator Ted Cruz jumped into the immigration debate, claiming he led the fight against amnesty for illegal immigrants, while Trump was AWOL.
When I was leading the fight against the Gang of 8 amnesty bill, where was Donald? He was firing Dennis Rodman on Celebrity Apprentice.
Here's a man, Robin Hood. This is Robin Hood over here. He talks about corruption on his financial disclosure form. He didn't even put that he's borrowed money from Citibank and from Goldman Sachs, which is a total violation. He didn't talk about the fact that he pays almost no interest. He just left it off, and now he's going to protect the people from the big bad banks.
We're going to move on.
Trump was asked about this statement from former Mexican President Vicente Fox just hours before the debate about the notion of Mexico paying to build a wall at the border.
I'm not going to pay for that wall. He should pay for it. He's got the money.
This guy used a filthy, disgusting word on television, and he should be ashamed of himself, and he should apologize, okay? Mexico will pay for it because they are not doing us any favors.
But for most of the night, Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio slammed Trump early and often. And when he fired back, like this exchange with Rubio, they still kept coming.
You lied to the students of Trump University.
38 years ago.
Oh, he lied 38 years ago. All right, I guess there's a statute of limitation on lies.
I think that maybe we should get a little bit of an apology from Ted. What do you think?
Senator.
Let me tell you right now, Donald, I will not apologize for a minute for defending the Constitution. I will not apologize for defending the Bill of Rights.
When the discussion turned to health care and Rubio demanded specifics on exactly what Trump's plan is to replace Obamacare, Rubio turned the tables on Trump when he gave few specifics, using a line that had been used on him by Chris Christie in a previous debate, and it brought down the House.
So that's the only part of the plan? Just the lines, the interstate competition?
No, the nice part about the plan, you have many different plans. You'll have competition. You'll have so many different plans.
But now he's repeating himself.
No, I'm not repeating. No. I watched him repeat himself 5 times 4 weeks ago. And
I saw you repeat yourself 5 times 5 seconds ago.
I watched him.
Trump was asked about releasing his tax returns for public scrutiny after 2012 presidential candidate Mitt Romney said this week there might be a bombshell there. Trump said he's being audited, as he has been for the past 12 years, and will release the returns after the audit is finished.
You know, Donald says he's being audited. Well, I would think that would underscore the need to release those returns. If he has said something that was false and that an audit is going to find was fraudulent, the voters need to know.
Any debate about policy.
One at a time.
In a debate that occasionally spun out of control, Ben Carson, who rarely had a chance to speak, had what may be the line of the night.
Can somebody attack me, please?
Okay, here, Wolf.
On a tense night filled with fiery attacks and fierce exchanges, the 3 top candidates sparred like this for hours. Trump was almost always the target on issues and sometimes personal remarks.
Donald, you can get back on your meds now.
There's a lot of fun up here tonight, I have to tell you. Thank you for the book. I really appreciate it.
Donald, relax.
Go ahead. I'm relaxed. You're the basket case. Go ahead. Go ahead. Don't get nervous. Go ahead.
I promise you, Donald, there's nothing about you that makes anyone nervous.
You're losing so badly.
Watching this.
You don't know what's happening.
Now the question is what impact this debate will have on the Republican primary leader Donald Trump and the dozen states that will be holding presidential contests next Tuesday. He's hoping to gain such a huge delegate advantage next week to all but end the contest. Lena, Jeff, we'll see whether that happens now.
Yeah, we will see. And let's talk more in depth now on what happened tonight. Joining us now is Professor Michael Genovese. He's the Loyola Marymount Chair of Leadership and Director of the Institute for Leadership Studies. So welcome. I think we can all agree that this was really a great debate, something that was really actually fun to watch. We expected that they would team up on Donald Trump. Marco Rubio really came out strongly. Do you think they were effective in kind of bringing the big man down?
Well, he issued a number of hits, some very strong hits, but you never know what's going to work with Donald Trump. His supporters seem to rally behind him no matter what he says, no matter what he does. So, yes, he got hit, but I don't know if those hits will sting very much. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of action. There was volume, and it was like a circus. The problem is we're electing a president of the United States, and it was a little bit undignified to watch basically three petulant children screaming at each other.
Yeah. I was going to bring that up because it was interesting that you brought that up about the petulant children part, because if you saw on social media, a lot of people said that they were embarrassed by this. Now, I actually thought that it was pretty fun to watch. I don't know if that's good or bad, but for me, I got a lot of information out of it because it furthered everything that they've been talking about. But is there a thin line here, and it gets to the point where it is petulant children and we kind of embarrass ourselves?
Well, Donald Trump.
Did we do that tonight?
Well, I think we did a bit. Donald Trump is all into entertainment, and he's always the star of the show. And so you expect that from Donald Trump. The one grown-up in the room, really, Governor Kasich, seemed to get nothing, no traction, no great hits in. And it was almost as if you're contrasting the grown-up with the children, and the children are grabbing the attention by demanding the attention.
Yeah. I think one thing a lot of people are going to be scratching their heads about is, where was this Marco Rubio for the last 4 months?
Well, I think Rubio's strategy was let Trump self-destruct. And I think that was a wise strategy. The problem is he didn't. And the more outrageous he gets, the more people fall in love with him, because they like the fact that he seems strong and he seems forceful. And so I think Rubio's strategy and the Republican field strategy was let him do his own damage to himself. He didn't. And so they had to switch very quickly. And Rubio turned on a dime and was incredibly effective tonight. A lot of jabs. He looked strong. He looked forceful. He looked like he was the one in command.
But was it too late? Did he wait too long? He's behind in almost every state now, right?
You would have thought that the attacks would have come earlier because he was the front runner, but people shied away because they didn't want the attention turned back to them, and that Trump had a way of really just jamming them. And so I think they were hesitant, and they kept waiting for him to self-destruct. He just didn't, or hasn't.
So you think it might have been a strategic thing to wait to wait this long, and we'll see. I guess we'll see on Tuesday whether or not that worked. Now, if you weren't watching the whole debate and you were kind of switching back and forth, you might have thought there were only 3 people on stage. So, what do you think? Do you think that says anything about what we'll see on Tuesday?
Well, on Tuesday, it's very clear that the two side candidates, Kasich and Carson, have not developed traction. They're not going to get double digits. They're for all intents and purposes out of the race now. Kasich is staying in because he wants to try to win Ohio. Rubio needs to win Florida, where he's behind, and Cruz needs to win Texas. That's the only stop Trump strategy that's plausible.
They threw a lot of stuff at Trump tonight. Him hiring, illegal Polish workers, if you will. But it seems to me, and they were just going after him from all sides, but it seems like what might stick might be his tax statements and IRS forms in the past have yet to be released. And he's saying that it's because he's been audited. Is that a fair argument on his? Is that a good objection on his part?
Not at all.
Yeah.
No, there's no reason why he can't release all of the tax returns. It has nothing to do with the audit.
So is he hiding something, you think?
Well, that's what one might conclude from it. We don't have evidence. Mitt Romney hit them with a hard jab, challenged him, and Donald Trump shrunk from the situation. He has pulled back, and there's no good reason to withhold your tax returns right now.
So having seen the debate tonight and considering where we are now with this campaign, what do you think about the chances that the California primary in June might actually have some serious impact and maybe even a brokered convention?
Well, you know, the bluest of the blue states will probably not have an impact in the Democratic race, because by then it looks like Hillary will have enough delegates to have wrapped it up. But it may very well be that that's the decider and tips the balance one way or the other.
What an irony, huh?
If Donald Trump doesn't have the delegates going into the convention to win on the first ballot, he probably doesn't win. And then what happens is they'll have ballot after ballot. In 1924, they took them 103 ballots to get a nominee who ended up losing. But over time, something's going to give. And if you can't get a nominee, it opens it up to the entire floor, and anyone can then be selected. Mitt Romney, Nikki Haley, maybe even the chair of the convention, the Congressman Ryan, who might be an alternative.
Yeah.
He'll be chairing the convention. He might look presidential. He might look like the voice of reason.
And who, I might add, is not getting along with Trump at all,
right,
according to reports that just came out this week. Yeah.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for your time, your expertise.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Right, gentlemen, thank you.